So I dutifully learn the vocabulary, but find it hard to see the heart of our culture in translating bed and sink into Potawatomi. Learning nouns was pretty easy. After all, I'd learned thousands of botanical Latin names and scientific terms. I realized that this could not be too much different. Just a one-for-one substitution, memorization. At least on paper where you can see the letters, this is true. Hearing the language is a different story. There are fewer letters in our alphabet, so the distinction among words for a beginner is often subtle. With the beautiful clusters of consonants, of zh and mb, and shwe and kwe and mushk, our language sounds like wind in the pines and water over rocks, sounds our ears may have been more delicately attuned to in the past, but no longer. To learn again, you really have to listen. My sister's gift to me one Christmas was a set of magnetic tiles for the refrigerator in Ojibwe, or Anishinaabe-Moan, a language closely related to Potawatomi. I spread them out on my kitchen table looking for familiar words, but the more I looked, the more worried I got. Among the 100 or more tiles, there was a single word that I recognized. Miigwech, thank you. The small feeling of accomplishment from months of study evaporated in a moment. I remember paging through the Ojibwe dictionary she sent, trying to decipher the tiles, but the spellings didn't always match, and the print was too small, and there are way too many variations on a single word, and I was feeling that this was just way too hard. The threads in my brain knotted, and the harder I tried, the tighter they became. Pages blurred, and my eyes settled on a word. A verb, of course. To be a Saturday. Pfft, I threw down the book. Since when is Saturday a verb? Everybody knows it's a noun. I grabbed the dictionary and flipped more pages, and all kinds of things seemed to be verbs. To be a hill. To be red. To be a long sandy stretch of beach. And then my finger rested on Wikwigama, to be a bay. Ridiculous, I ranted in my head. There's no reason to make it so complicated. No wonder no one speaks it. A cumbersome language, impossible to learn, and more than that, it's all wrong. A bay is most definitely a person, place, or thing, a noun and not a verb. I was ready to give up. I'd learned a few words, done my duty to the language that was taken from my grandfather. Oh, the ghosts of the missionaries in the boarding schools must have been rubbing their hands in glee at my frustration. She's going to surrender, they said. And then I swear I heard the zap of synapses firing. An electric current sizzled down my arm and through my finger and practically scorched the page where that one word lay. In that moment, I could smell the water of the bay, watch it rock against the shore, and hear it sift onto the sand. A bay is a noun, only if water is dead. When bay is a noun, it is defined by humans, trapped between its shores and contained by the word. But the verb, wikwigama, to be a bay, releases the water from bondage and lets it live. To be a bay holds the wonder that for this moment the living water has decided to shelter itself between these shores, conversing with cedar roots and a flock of baby mergansers. Because it could do otherwise, become a stream or an ocean or a waterfall, and there are verbs for that too. To be a hill, to be a sandy beach, to be a Saturday. All are possible verbs in a world where everything is alive. Water, land, and even a day. The language a mirror for seeing the animacy of the world, the life that pulses through all things, through pines and nuthatches and mushrooms. This is the language I hear in the woods. This is the language that lets us speak of what wells up all around us. and the vestiges of boarding schools, those soap-wielding missionary wraiths, hang their heads in defeat. This is the grammar of animacy. Imagine seeing your grandmother stand at the stove in her apron and then saying of her, "Look, it is making soup. It has gray hair." We might snicker at such a mistake, but also recoil from it. In English, we never refer to a member of our family, or indeed to any person, as it. That would be a profound act of disrespect. It robs a person of selfhood and kinship, reducing a person to a mere thing. So it is that in Potawatomi and most other indigenous languages, we use the same words to address the living world as we do for our family, because they are our family. To whom does our language extend the grammar of animacy? Naturally, plants and animals are animate, but as I learn, I am discovering that the Potawatomi understanding of what it means to be animate diverges from the list of attributes of living beings we all learned in Biology 101. In Potawatomi 101, rocks are animate, as are mountains and water and fire and places. Beings that are imbued with spirit, our sacred medicines, our songs, drums, and even stories are all animate. The list of the inanimate seems to be smaller, filled with objects that are made by people. Of an inanimate being, like a table, we say, "What is it?" And we answer, "Dopwin Yahweh, table it is." But of apple, we must say, "Who is that being?" and reply, "Mishimin Yahweh, apple, that being is." Yahweh, the animate to be. I am, you are, she, he is. To speak of those possessed with life and spirit, we must say Yahweh. By what linguistic confluence do Yahweh of the Old Testament and Yahweh of the New World both fall from the mouths of the reverent? Isn't this just what it means? To be, to have the breath of life within, to be the offspring of creation. The language reminds us in every sentence of our kinship with all of the animate world. English doesn't give us many tools for incorporating respect for animacy. In English, you are either a human or a thing. Our grammar boxes us in by the choice of reducing a non-human being to an it, or it must be gendered, inappropriately, as a he or a she. Where are our words for the simple existence of another living being? Where is our Yahweh? My friend Michael Nelson, an ethicist who thinks a great deal about moral inclusion, told me about a woman he knows, a field biologist whose work is among other than humans. Most of her companions are not two-legged, so her language has shifted to accommodate her relationships. She kneels along the trail to inspect a set of moose tracks, saying, "Someone's already been this way this morning." "Someone is in my hat," she says, shaking out a deer fly. Someone, not something. When I am in the woods with my students, teaching them the gifts of plants and how to call them by name, I try to be mindful of my language, to be bilingual between the lexicon of science and the grammar of animacy. Although they still have to learn scientific roles and Latin names, I hope I am also teaching them to know the world as a neighborhood of non-human residents, to know that, as eco-theologian Thomas Berry has written, we must say of the universe that it is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. One afternoon, I sat with my field ecology students by a wickwagama and shared this idea of animate language. One young man, Andy, splashing his feet in the clear water, asked the big question. "Wait a second," he said. as he wrapped his mind around this linguistic distinction. Doesn't that mean that speaking English, thinking in English, somehow gives us permission to disrespect nature by denying everyone else the right to be persons? Wouldn't things be different if nothing was an it? Swept away with the idea, he said it felt like an awakening to him. More like a remembering, I think. The animacy of the world is something we already know, but the language of animacy teeters on extinction, not just for native peoples, but for everyone. Our toddlers speak of plants and animals as if they were people, extending to them self and intention and compassion, until we teach them not to. We quickly retrain them and make them forget. When we tell them that the tree is not a who, but an it, we make that maple an object. We put a barrier between us, absolving ourselves of moral responsibility and opening the door to exploitation. Saying it makes a living land into natural resources. If maple is an it, we can take up the chainsaw. If maple is her, we think twice. Another student countered Andy's argument, but we can't say he or she. That would be anthropomorphism. They are well-schooled biologists who have been instructed in no uncertain terms never to ascribe human characters to a study object, to another species. It's a cardinal sin that leads to a loss of objectivity. Carla pointed out that it's also disrespectful to the animals. We shouldn't project our perceptions onto them. They have their own ways. They're not just people in furry costumes. Andy countered, but just because we don't think of them as humans doesn't mean they aren't beings. Isn't it even more disrespectful to assume that we're the only species that count as persons? The arrogance of English is that the only way to be animate, to be worthy of respect and moral concern, is to be human. A language teacher I know explained that grammar is just the way we chart relationships in language. Perhaps it also reflects our relationships with each other. Maybe a grammar of animacy could lead us to a whole new way of living in the world. Other species as sovereign people. A world with a democracy of species, not a tyranny of one. With moral responsibility to water and wolves, and with a legal system that recognizes the standing of other species. It's all in the pronouns. Andy is right. Learning the grammar of animacy could well be a restraint on our mindless exploitation of land. But there's more to it. I have heard our elders give advice like, "You should go among the standing people," or "Go spend some time with those beaver people." They remind us that the capacity of others as our teachers, as holders of knowledge, as guides. Imagine walking through a richly inhabited world of birch people, bear people, rock people, beings we think of and therefore speak of as persons worthy of our respect, of inclusion in a peopled world. We Americans are reluctant to learn a foreign language of our own species, let alone another species. But imagine the possibilities. Imagine the access we would have to different perspectives, the things we might see through other eyes, the wisdom that surrounds us. We don't have to figure out everything by ourselves. There are intelligences other than our own, teachers all around us. Imagine how much less lonely the world would be.